we are with two of my favorite Belgian people, Nele and Mike from Consouling Sounds, who have been running a label for 13 years, which stands out among the crowd, not only in Belgium, but definitely in Europe, and most likely also worldwide, because of certain ethics that they represent and certain ideas. So, could you both say what are your responsibilities at Consouling Sound, apart from Mike being the one who consumes chewing gum all the time?
It's my weakness.
So, Mike, what is your responsibility?
I started Consouling together with a friend. So I am more or less responsible for the way we progressed, as it were, and nowadays our team is a bit bigger, and for now I am mainly focusing on the sales aspect. That's my duty.
And Nele, your responsibilities?
At the moment, because I wouldn't say that we have like fixed job titles. We're a small team and very dynamic in job description or content or how you want. And so sometimes responsibilities move from one person to another for a certain amount of time, but at the moment I am the one overseeing physical production. So that means making sure that all the records and the CDs are getting pressed and delivered on time. I also am the one who runs the Console, which is the non-profit organization from where it all began. So we have still this organization, and then on the other hand, there's more the store and everything involved. And so I am the main coordinator, which means that I put in motion a lot of projects, like the residence projects, which we already talked about, but also the festival 24 Hours of Deep Listening.
Yeah. So you've mentioned that the label indirectly started from this non-profit organization. Can you tell us a little bit about this Console organization and what it meant as a background for Consouling Sounds?
Yes. It's very good that you ask about it, because it's the fact that we started as a non-profit organization still determines the atmosphere in which we work. The ideology, exactly. So the name Console came from gaming console. This is also in Dutch, it's a console.
Yeah.
And the original idea was that it could be a place to bring different artistic disciplines together that did not always come together in an obvious way. So it had to be the idea of being a place where you could play around and experiment was very much there from the beginning. And also it was just a structure to try something out. At the time, we both had different full-time jobs. I mean, you do not start a label and then earn money from it overnight. So it was a good way, an easy way to start something when you need, you want to do it professionally, because it was always from the beginning, the intention was we are going to take this serious. We're going to do this professionally, but we don't have any money. So we started with a very low budget. And that's when such a non-profit organization is a really handy vessel. And then it was only when we opened the store, the physical Consouling store, that we also started a company next to this non-profit organization, because it didn't feel right to us to commercially buy and sell records. That was maybe too far away from the idea what the non-profit organization needed to do. So the idea was always to support artists, much more than just being a regular record label. It was more about creating a space, the space and the place and the know-how to give their musical projects the best possible fertile grounds. I often say that we are like farmers, biological farmers or something. So, and that's still, even if we have like we have the store, but the idea is always there. So it's a very it's not a very easy kind of music to promote. It doesn't follow all the standard rules of the commercial big music industry. So it needs this kind of place where it can experiment freely. And that was the idea from the very beginning. And that's still the spirit of Consouling Sounds. And the name Consouling Sounds also, of course, derives from this original name.
So I take it that although at the beginning it's a non-profit basis, it was always taken as like very seriously in some ways and something that you wanted to do professionally. But can you really pinpoint the day or like the time, the year or so, when this became a professional thing for you? When you're like, okay, this is now our profession. This is what we need for making money.
Yeah, well, I think it's a bit dangerous to say that a non-profit organization could not be a professional organization, but it's just about the fact that running a store for us, it needed a different kind of structure than this non-profit based organization that had other goals. But Mike, I'm going to let you answer this one.
Yes, we can exactly pinpoint when we decided to make it my job. Before this, amongst others, I had a job at the university where I was writing my PhD dissertation. And nearing the end of it, it became clear to me that I didn't really want to proceed in academia. So I just wanted to defend my PhD thesis and then go do something else. And then Nele asked, so what do you want to do then? And then I said, well, don't laugh, but I would be interested to see if we could take Consouling a step further. And thankfully she did not laugh, but she said, okay, let's figure out how we can do this. So we, especially Nele, because in my last year, my focus was on my PhD, of course, but Nele already figured out how we could make it a viable plan. And then nearing the end of my PhD period, we together wrote a business model and then
business plan,
and then we took it from there.
At a certain point, it became such a concrete plan that you just don't want to go back. It's just something you try out, and then it's there before you, and you just need the money, and then you try to figure that one out. And when you figure that one out, it's just, you kind of don't sleep for 14 days. And then you just go for it, I guess. But at that point, I still have a different job. So I have been working for Consouling on this. I had been working for Consouling on the side, just helping out Mike in the evenings. At a certain point, I also needed to join him in the organization. So, yeah, just because it had become so much work, was just not feasible anymore.
If I would have got like a regular job 9 to 5, Consouling in the meantime just took so much of my time that it would be impossible to proceed, or we'd have to scale back. But when you're in growth, then you don't want to scale back, of course. Yeah, I defended my thesis successfully in January of 2014. and we got the keys to what would become Consouling Store 1.0 in February. And we opened up in April.
Okay. So we have Dr. Consouling Sounds. So you've already mentioned you're quite a small team, actually. So how many people apart from you two are working for the label?
Well,
like really as their regular daytime job?
Yes, we have Thibault, who's working full-time, and we have Ian, who is working part-time for the moment, but we really want him to be active full-time as well, so that's something we're working towards. And then we have a freelance help of 1 day in the week by Consouling. And then there are some projects that people are working on. That's not
year-round, like Simi, who is our festival coordinator. She works for us also on a freelance basis, interim basis for several months. So I would say, and then Joran, of course, also involved in the, and then we often have interns for which we are very, very grateful. Coming from all kinds of schools, universities, bringing their expertise, and I always hope that they leave with also. I always say I hope that you leave with a better understanding of your talents and of yourself, and have some. There's been some people who also continued working in music or in the study of musical culture, and it's really cool when they did their internship at Consouling, because it expands your network, so it's great. But our core team is 4 people. That's at the moment it's like that.
So you've already mentioned that this was Mike's idea and that you made a business plan together, but so how much of the label is like, how to what extent is the label part of a family? Let's put it like that.
It's very much part of the family. It's something, we live and breathe, and perhaps sometimes we take it a bit too far when our daughters are with us and we're sitting at the table and we're starting to discuss something and not Consouling again.
Our kids are now 12 years old.
And they are like not going to follow Dad's business.
They are becoming opinionated. Which is good, very good.
I just want to say that is something that we want as parents.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? We want them to have opinions. Yeah.
So no, it's sometimes, but I think that's the same with everyone who runs a business, or cares about their job. I mean, we talk about it all the time. It's also that we don't really have 9 to 5 hours. We're always involved with it, so it's also a matter of sometimes just saying no and taking a date for yourself. It's really important to have limitations and boundaries, something we had to learn and we're not always that good at. It's just because you live and breathe it. It's not that you work for someone else. It's something that you have decided for yourself to invest your time and your life in, and that you're also depending on especially at the moment where you expand and you have personnel, you have people working for you, you take on this responsibility for their future. They should also be able to evolve, not only considering their paycheck, but also in job content, because with a very small team, it's difficult sometimes to evolve. So the people who work for us, they are gems. They are really very special people. They need to be very flexible. They need to want to think along, know that the future of Consouling is also in their hands, not only in ours. And we also we take a lot of care that they feel that they can determine it together with us. It's not Mike and me that set out a line and say, this is the way that we are going, because the car has 4 wheels and now it can drive. But if one wheel doesn't want to drive or doesn't work anymore, yeah, well, then the car isn't going to do a lot. So, you know, it's important that everybody it becomes part of this organic this organic whole that evolves and yeah,
it's an entity, right?
Yes, it's an entity, and it's not for everyone to. We don't have these simple jobs that say, you know, this is the procedure and now you're going to do it.
Yeah.
You have to.
There is no guide to being consoling.
Exactly. For instance, 14 days into his internship, Ian, who now works for us, was making changes to our web shop to make it better, to make it function better. And that's the kind of person that we need. Somebody who says, hey, I think you could change a lot if you just this. And I said, you go and do it. And that's the fun thing, I think, about working in this team, that you have this freedom, because we sit together every week and everything is up for discussion. And you know, the team will carry you to do your best and, you know, to achieve your goals. So yeah, as far as stress is concerned, this is the most stressful job I've ever had in my life, because, you know, the pressure of where will it all end, and the music industry is difficult. But as far as team is concerned, it's the best job I ever had, because there's this entity, there's this family, there's this feeling of we will get there together. Whatever we need to do or wherever we need to get, we will get there together.
So you've said that you two are not the ones who are like deciding on the line of where Consouling will go. But at the same time, you also said that you wrote down a business model for the label and everything. So when you started in 2008, I figure that none of you had any experience in the music industry before, right?
Well, my then partner we had a micro label.
I didn't.
Before that, and but we quit it, and essentially that was the start of Consouling. So we said, I don't want to do a micro label anymore. I want to restart together with me, but let's take it seriously and let's work on it from day one. So he did have the experience with the micro label, especially of where the pitfalls were and where he didn't want us to land. So that really helped us out in the beginning, because from basically day one, he was looking out for distribution partners and media partners and whatnot, while I was still looking at the CDs. We just pressed, oh, look at shiny. So he directly gave us a push and a purpose. So we relatively quickly secured international distribution, and then later on even American distribution. And that's it's really his to his credit. He really pushed us in that respect. But yeah, for the rest, you figure it out as you go along. There are a lot of mistakes.
And the reason that Miguel isn't working with us anymore has more to do with personal reasons of having too much work to combine with the label work, having some some family things that he needed the time to, you know, be there for family members, and having bought a house and all that stuff. So he, life got in the way. So, I mean, we didn't part in a bad way or anything. It was just a decision. It was then at the time that I actually stepped up to the plate, because Miguel was the one who was always taking care of production,
and he could do it as a hobby. But when we decided to take it a step further,
it was too much for him.
Well, I'm at the limit of what I can do, and I feel like I would hinder the growth of the organization. So he decided to take the stuff off. But there was no bad blood involved whatsoever. And if there would be a time when he says, I'm in the mood again,
he would always be welcome.
I think that's also something that we have to talk about later. This family aspect that we've already mentioned. So, but was, for example, the musical direction of the label, I don't want to say set in stone, but was it already clear that you wanted to support this kind of music? Because, let's be honest, we are talking about a niche scene. Lots of the artists, yeah, like very, very small scene. Lots of the artists that you feature are probably not selling 5 digits entities or units of their releases. So did you come up with the idea, this is what we're going to push?
Well, we basically combined back in the day our favorite music, which for me and him was both post-rock, and Miguel also ambient music and drone, which I wasn't into at first, but he really sold me. So, and the focus would be on the more post-rock side of things, because 13 years ago, or 14 years ago when we actually started, it was relatively fresh still, but very, very fragmented. And it was our goal not only to give a podium or an opportunity for those kinds of artists to release, but also in our web store collect as much as we can of those types of music, so that there's like a platform, a go-to platform for the types of music. But as we progressed, we noticed that the post-rock genre, more or less by declaring that they were free of the rock dogmas, started their own dogmas, and it wasn't that refreshing anymore. And we kind of got a bit bored of the music that presented back then. So we decided to steer the ship in another direction and more up for music that is adventurous and that is not adhering to a single genre, but that's really breaking down the walls between genres and sounds fresh and exciting. And that was kind of our focus, and that still is our focus today.
It's difficult to say or to explain to people what kind of genres we release. I wish I had a solution for that. So I think in the end, if the Consouling Sounds genre would be something that people would have an association with, then that would be totally cool. It's sometimes a difficulty, not for our fans, not at all, because they totally understand it, but when I have to explain to other people what we do, I am sometimes a bit lost for words. So I sometimes say, well, it's experimental, or it's avantgarde, or it's just, it's not commercial, but all these things never really say what it is. Also, when you say it's not commercial, it's like those artists don't have the intention to reach an audience, and that's untrue. I mean, every artist wants a large audience, an audience as large as they can reach. You don't make art to hide it somewhere or
in the basement.
In the basement. So yeah, I think it's often music that has also a dark aesthetic. If you would propose some really poppy tunes to us, then the lyrics would have to be really, really out there. I think.
Although you had some very poppy covers
True,
in some of your releases.
True. I guess we are looking for artists that really make music as art, maybe, you know, and from the heart, and are interested in doing things in a professional way, but are uncompromising, you know. It's their art, and will not compromise in ways of marketing or commercial just to be able to sell the music. Of course they want to reach an audience, and of course there's nothing wrong with selling albums or selling your music, but it's not the thing that comes first. It really is the art and the message.
The art.
Yeah.
So we already basically have 2 points that are important for your label's history. First, like 13, 14 years ago, when you decided that you wanted to do a bigger label, let's put it like that. Second, like 2014, when Mike said, okay, I'm finished with my PhD, I would like to do this as a full-time job. So those are already 2 points in your label's history that are important for your development. Could you name 2 or 3 more points that where you say, okay, those were, for the label itself, very important moments, apart, of course, from the moment when Nele joined?
Well, I think very important for us, both on a professional as also on a personal level, was getting in touch with Amenra, of course. First, getting to know Mathieu with his syndrome project, and then with the collaboration on the next 2 albums, which eventually resulted in a long-standing relationship between us.
To this day.
To this very day. Yeah, it's fantastic because they're also very driven. They have also their ideas and ideologies, which are perfectly in line with ours. So it's basically a pleasure to work with them. And it's also fun to see how they were able to grow from the point where we started to collaborate, and having been able to help them along the way is, as a fan myself, is really humbling.
There's a story I want to tell about this. So I wasn't really that involved in the label at the time, and I had hardly any idea of what was really going on, also because we were young parents at the time, and we have twins, as you know, and every parent who has twins knows that's crazy. And those were only like a year and a half or something. So the first time that Colin came to our house to drop something off, I had no idea. I did not know of the importance of this or whatever. So he comes into our house, he's chatting with Mike, they're having this professional chit-chat. At a certain point, Colin looks around and he says, "You guys have twins, right? I really recognize all of this." I said, "Yeah, well, I also have twins." Oh my God. So that was a connection. And then I was like, okay, yeah, nice guy. Then Colin leaves the house and Mike says to me, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Colin of Amenra just was in our house." And I was like,
yeah, that was
okay.
That were the fanboy days.
Calm down, Mike. But now I really understand. And it's so cool also for me. It's really challenging production-wise when I can assist in... I'm in very close contact with them at the moment where we have to, you know, release an album, and we have to talk about, you know, the design and all these things. And they really have such a great vision, and it's really, really exciting for me to work with them. So,
so just as a little off-topic question, Mike, who could be a person to which you could be a total fanboy, just like Colin of Amenra? Would there be somebody else?
Would be somebody else. Well, I must admit that having been active in the music industry for quite some while now, some time now is a bit mystifying.
That's a good point.
So there's not really fanboyism in that respect. But of course, there are a lot of figures out there that I respect tremendously. Josh Graham, for example, is somebody I have utmost respect for. Also, somebody like Aaron Turner, or the guys from Neles, what they have achieved and what they have started. Basically, it's mind blowing. So yeah, there are a lot of people I respect, but the days of fanboys are.
So, okay, then we have 3 points. You know, the start, the meeting or the collaboration with Amenra, Mike turning this into his full-time profession. Any other point where you say, okay, this was a huge leap for the label?
Well, there's also this collaboration with Consouling-artists in Auschwitz, which is a very important view in Belgium. And before our collaboration, we kind of struggled to
get noticed.
Yeah.
Cultural, by the Flemish cultural scene, I would say.
Yeah, this small little quirky label. So who are they and what are they doing? So, but the guys from IIVII, and Belgium, were interested and triggered by what we were doing. So they offered us to be label investors, and during their broadcast festival, we could curate a venue, or a part of the venue, ourselves for the day, which really gave us the opportunity to do some cool stuff, but also to get a bit more noticed in the cultural landscape, as it were, because ever since we did that, we regularly get asked by other bigger venues to curate an evening or a video or whatever. So that's really something that was important for us to grow as an organization as well.
Yeah, because that's also something that is striking about you as a label, that there is this connection to the Flemish cultural scene, which also gives you a certain unique point among European labels, I would say.
Well, that's
so
because of the way we started out as the non-profit organization. The idea was with the label that we started to show the world the Flemish or Belgian bands, that they're incredible and they make fantastic music. And so we wanted to put the Belgians in the world and at the same time attract the world to Belgium. And that's something we still live by. We really want to give local talents a chance.
International chance. And I would say it's really difficult to pinpoint. I mean, I think we pinpointed the biggest, most important moments in our history, but there are also so many other, like Cult Nation, for example, as a platform. It's a platform that has been really important to us for getting more international visibility, because these are people also just like us. It's husband and wife, and they are really have a strong vision of what they want to. They really specialize in our kind of music, and the fact that they write about what we do is so important to us, especially since, like, on the level of, if you talk about customers, a third of our customers are Americans. So it would not be possible without the support of people like them. Also Echoes and Dust and Sander, who works there. Sander is our Twitter guy. He is a Dutchman, but he lives in Scotland, and the Consouling...
And supports a Belgian label. That is European entitled.
And it's just, you know, we have so many people. Also Michelle, who has organized so many Consouling Sounds presents evenings for us. is also still part of this group of people who at a certain point say, hey, you know what? I would really like to work with you in some kind of way. This is what I do best. And so can you do something with my talents or, and that's the only way we could grow or come to this point where we are now. So that's why I say we are farmers. It's like a piece of land, and the way that, what the land produces, it's all depending on the people wanting to work it. There's this idea of what we represent and where we would like to go to, but it's not set in stone because everything is changing so fast in the music industry. But I think in media, in everything these days, our world is evolving so fast. You cannot set it in stone too much. You have to also set it free and, let it go.
Yeah, especially if you talk about the further away future, I think that is very difficult to say. But are there any plans where you would like to take the label to as a next step? For example, now the 24 hours of deep listening is becoming bigger. I mean, like this year it's already, I don't know if it was 2 days already last year, but this year it's 2 days. So this one is becoming a bigger event. Any other things or any other fields where you would like to take the label?
Well, from the very beginning, I think we always asked ourselves the question, what can a label still mean in this day and age? This day and age where only a few big companies really control what's happening in music, and then these companies are even data companies then, or tech companies, then actually really musical companies. So I think we've always said, like, we have no fixed answer. We do really believe that Consouling could go on for a very long time in whatever form or shape. The essence of it is that it remains a place for artists to do their thing, to be free from, to have this no pressure to do experiment, to have this free space to think and to work and to experiment. But of course, we also, this is a really nice idea, but we also have to think about how do we need to finance this. And at the moment, it's financed by the fact that we sell physical products, like records. But and I know and everybody knows that there's this big question mark. How long will this still remain a thing? We've been talking about it for a long time, and it would be just too easy to say, yeah, it will remain. But we are already dealing with niche music and a niche audience. We also have to be prepared for the fact that at one time a future generation might just not be interested in this anymore. So that's really a challenge and something that doesn't keep us up at night, that we think about regularly. So the big idea is the big challenge is how can we achieve funding, if you want to call it funding or you want to call it income, to give this space to the artists. Maybe it does not need to be based on selling stuff. Maybe it could be a totally different model of gathering funds. So that's definitely something that we are moving towards, to have this variation of types of income. And one step forward is to explain more to the people and to the amazing community, without which this would not be possible at all, what we are doing. We think that this is the very first step, explaining what we are doing, showing what these musicians do, showing what their thoughts are, what they make, how they make it. And then, so that's by like organizing a festival, but sadly, of course, our audience, sadly, the challenge there is that our audience is all over the world. So we have, as I said, we have a lot of people in North America following us, Canada, but also South America, China, Japan, Russia. And we cannot bring them together in one space. So just organizing a festival to sell tickets and see this as an income is also not really the solution. But taking it to a digital level might be. So this is the phase we are in right now, which is experimenting with how do we convey everything we want to convey? How do we let people experience wherever they are in a very fun and interactive way what these musicians do? And of course, when you are not a big tech company and you don't have millions of euros or dollars or to just throw around, it's not always that easy because you have these ideas of how it could work, but you have to be careful what you invest in. So that's also why during the festival Deep Listening, we are experimenting with virtual reality and with all kinds of young people who are into all these new facilities to, I don't know, get some kind of early access to new ideas on this level, to new possibilities, and to always try to stay on point, I guess, and maybe even a step ahead. So that's where we are right now. That's maybe a big question mark, how Consouling Sounds will operate in the future. But it's an ongoing research project, Torsten.
Yeah, it is. It is. I know that for myself. So that was our first bigger block, and I would like to talk to you a little bit more in detail about artists that have been releasing on Consouling Sound, or that will be, or that still are releasing on Consouling Sound. So you have some very, very interesting artists on your label and sub-labels. You have a CD out by a local music club. At least that's the way I would translate it. But also like harsh noise and everything. So is diversity in itself something that is important to you?
Yes, of course, but it also has, but not be, okay, yes, it does, but not because I want it to be diverse as such. I just don't want to have any constrictions. When I listen to something and I think it's interesting, or we as a team, and we think it's interesting, then we want to be able to do it and not think, oh, it's not this genre or this genre, so we cannot do it. No, it's interesting, it's within our scope, it's what we feel a connection with, so yeah, let's do it. So in that respect, there's a lot of room for variation, but not for the sake of variation as such.
You've already mentioned that, like 13, 14 years ago, you took the first step to establishing this label. And of course, I think one of the first things that you ask yourself is, okay, who are we going to release? So what was the first artist that you worked with, and how did that happen?
Well, the first artist we worked with was Jordi from Sebastian, and a Polish artist. No, not later. No one wished to settle here. And that's basically back in the days when MySpace was a thing.
Do you remember that one?
I do. But I guess that lots of the people listening don't.
They will now look it up. It probably has a Wikipedia page.
back in the days when I was talk. So we basically searched MySpace for interested acts, and we tried to establish contact and asked them the opportunity to release their music. At first, we did it as CDR releases, very limited, because there was no funding or finances to do the real deal from the very first steps. So we worked with them, and especially Exosense was really a hit. Back then, we were distributed by Conspiracy Records in Belgium, which was a really big company back then. They also released Mono, ISIS, and whatnot. So they were very important. And they picked up the Exosense album as the album of the week. And whenever Conspiracy Records announced an album for a week, it was prominently on their website for almost a year. And that really helped us out, so we could have some represses and represses and represses of the first CDR, which really put us on the map, and also gave us the fundings for our very first factory pressed CD. And because on his micro label, Miguel had worked together with IIVII on a Nadja album. He asked IIVII if we could produce something by Nadja, and because IIVII was very grateful that Miguel gave him the opportunity back in the days to get started, he now wanted to answer that by giving us the opportunity to get started. So our very first factory pressed CD was Nadja, the Bungled and the Botched. And that was really a success. We sold the first pressing overnight, and, practically, and we could again do some represses and really establish ourselves as a label from the very beginning. So we're very grateful for the opportunity that IIVII gave us. So that's why IIVII is always welcome.
And still releases on your label to this day. Interesting about this, I think, is the notion that you've already mentioned. You want to promote and support Belgian artists, but at the same time, you are also a label which is like a baby from the digital age. You know, maybe like MySpace, but still baby digital age. So you are one of those first labels, I think, which really took digitalization seriously. I mean, that is very, very interesting. We've already mentioned Nadja. We've already mentioned Amenra. Could you maybe give us 3 or 4 more artists where you say, okay, these are the artists which could be used to define what Consouling Sounds is?
It's very difficult to say these and these and these because they're all important, and it's really
that is true. That is true, and I
but of course like there are some artists that gave us opportunity to grow or to better define maybe what we wanted to do, or who came to us with projects that pushed us to grow also as a label and also in our role as a label, which is something that we question constantly. And I would say Jozef van Wissem is definitely one of those people. Josh Graham is absolutely also one of these. Dirk Serries is also very
interesting. That was one of the guys that I was thinking of too.
Because Dirk has such a history as a musician. It's unbelievable. The places he went to, the people he collaborated with, always staying true to his know-how, his specific genre, always still ready to experiment with it and to continue with it. Sadly, not all appreciated as he should be in this Flemish scene, because
he's a freaking legend.
Yes, he's a legend, and there are some places like Handelsbeurs in Ghent. I know they know him well and they really appreciate him. Wait, I'm thinking what Jarbo, of course. We released an album with her, which was also mesmerizing that she wanted to work with us.
Also very important for us are artists like Empusai and Barst, who are really yes, but that's on another level. But I mentioned Empusai and Barst because they're always thinking, just like George Graham, they're always thinking
about the bigger visual picture.
The bigger visual picture, thus making their art more like a Gesamtkunstwerk than just music.
Maybe to translate for those people who are not German speakers, Gesamtkunstwerk, which Mike just mentioned, means like a whole multi-leveled, multi-layered piece of art.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that is very dear to us. The idea
exciting to us.
It's exciting to us, but also the idea of, as I mentioned earlier, pushing boundaries, breaking walls, and that doesn't have to be walls between genres always, but can also be walls between disciplines, art disciplines, and so that's those really also define us as a label.
Yeah, and there are other artists, not only musicians, but graphical, visual artists that you cannot see, you cannot deduct this from the catalog. So if you would say, you would just consider our history as a number of releases, it does not represent everything. Because like there's Le Septième Œil, Lionel Arlen, who has done several art productions for us. There is especially also Dean Sora.
But that is something that we want to show the people with our timeline on our page, where you are able to skip through all the years and see a kind of continuation.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You mentioned a lot of experimental avant-garde artists. And if I wrote it down correctly for myself, you did not include anything metal, which strikes me because I think a lot of people got to know you through metal acts, like any of the 3 trillion incarnations of Maurice de Jong, or Alkerdeel, or that's very highly interesting.
We weren't finished yet.
But that is, I think, also the thing, right? Like there are so many facades and facets of a label that it's really hard to pinpoint it. And,
what you, I think you will agree, the metal on our label is not standard metal music.
No.
And that makes it sometimes difficult for these bands to find the right label because, and...
I mean, which label would take a Belgian black metal band?
I don't know.
With a singer who uses not only the dialect from his hometown, but the sociolect of the old people from his hometown. Brings it onto a black metal record that nobody will understand anyway, and then find a label for it. But you did.
And then find an audience for it. Then find a big audience for it.
Exactly.
Also abroad, which is crazy when you look at Alkerdeel. I mean,
it's good that you directly knew who I meant. I think that is very, very interesting. And I mean, the people that you mentioned are highly respectable artists. Josh Graham, Aidan Baker, Jarbo. They really push the boundaries. But would you say that this wish to go a step further, is that one of the key elements that an artist should have if he wants to be on Consouling Sound?
Yes. Being willing to push the boundaries, think outside the box, and not only in the way music is conceived, but also in the way music will be presented. That is very important for us indeed. And luckily we have found a lot of artists that are on the same page, and so we can take on that experiment together.
Would you say that trust or trustworthiness is one of the key personal trademarks that an artist should have?
Well,
is it important that you feel, okay, we can trust this band?
Well, yes, yes. Basically, the short answer is yes. The somewhat longer answer is Consouling is our life, basically, and because it's not only a profession, it is part of our identity. It's part of who we are, what we want to be, who we want to be, whenever we work together with an artist, it's really important for us to have this personal click. We have to be indeed on the same page, and there has to be a certain amount of trust to start with, and then we're going to expand on that trust together and see how far we can take it. That's the whole philosophy behind it, because it's a we become very personal commitments with artists, and we are true to our word, and we expect the artists to be true to theirs as well, so that we have a nice foundation to build on.
There's an openness, or there needs to be an openness in what we do together, how things evolve, because you can have certain goals of taking a project this and there, but it's not, it's not mathematical science. Sometimes a very good album just doesn't get picked up. I mean, even if you try your best, and at that point, it's very important that an artist can express this. Because otherwise we cannot work together. I mean, we are in the same boat, so to speak, and they are basically at the steer, but we are tending to the motor, I guess. But they are at the steering wheel. I would explain. I have this great analogies, Torsten. metaphors. No, so yeah, we have to, everybody has to put in the effort, but we really talk it through in the beginning, what do we expect from each other, and we work together along the way and see where we end up.
So when you say you work with the artists, how should we imagine that? Do you write down real contracts, or is it more or less a virtual handshake thing?
It's indeed more or less a virtual handshake thing.
Okay.
Because of our way of working specifically, and because the trust issue is really center of our collaboration. We make plans together, and we agree upon some things that we agree
practicalities.
Practicalities, yeah. And then we start building. That's basically it. And when we work with artists, of course, the music comes first, and then we decide on when the release of the album will be and on what media. And then we start devising plans on how to get it noticed, and perhaps have bookers interested, or have a tour. We're not booking ourselves, but when bookers are connected to the artists, we can work together towards a tour or something like that, and have something special for that. So basically everything we do is tailor-made to the artists. There is no standard formula.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do this, are you thinking with the artist release by release, so that you do this for every release? Or is there a point where it's okay, let's take Alkerdeel for a moment, because they've been working with you for years, where you and Jos from Babylon Doom and Alkerdeel automatically know that the next record will be put out by you and Babylon Doom? Or is it really like, okay, every record we talk about it?
Well, in the beginning, we always say we're in this for the long run, because when you're building on something, then it also grows beyond one release. As for instance, which you can see with Alkerdeel, because we did the previous albums, we could expand our work on that and have their audience or reach out to a much wider audience. So we, in the very beginning, we always think that we're in it for the long run, and of course, if they are not happy with the way we are working or how things have turned out, then they are always free to check out other opportunities. But it is our main goal to have a collaboration that stands the test of time. So also the artists know that they are welcome back when they have released on Consouling. They are welcome back.
We have already talked about this a bit, and I would like to come back to that. You have quite a lot, not quite a lot, but a few sublabels. And it seems as if behind every sublabel there is a certain idea. You have Consouling Agency, you have 9000, and you have Circuit, right? So what is the idea behind those, especially behind Circuits and also for me Consouling Agency, because that is something that I've randomly heard.
Well, the Consouling Agency is not really a label as such, it's more of a service.
Exactly.
With the agency, we take on artists who basically self-released their album, but they use us as the platform to do it, because it's a bit easier to get some press attention, or we know the ins and outs, so they can benefit from that. And that came into full fruition because there are a lot more bands out there that really could benefit from the platform we have built, but we simply don't have the resources to give them all a spot. So if they would fend for themselves, then they can use the platform, and that's how Consouling Agency came to life and is regularly used whenever something arises. Now we're very picky as far as Consouling Agency is concerned, because of course it's impossible to do that for every artist out there. So we have to be a bit picky. But then the other two, Circuits and 9000. Well, 9000 records refers to our postal code, 9000 Ghent. When we opened up the store, a lot of artists also came flooding in, and
local artists,
and
mosquitoes searching for blood.
No,
just joking.
Something like that, but then positive.
Desperate
the ones that you distributed or that you released are definitely
looking
not
for a
mosquitoes.
label.
That are not the mosquitoes, but I can imagine that there were guys coming in
Mm-hmm.
that wanted to work with you, where at one first glance you noticed, okay, now.
And we got to know some really interesting artists, and we really liked the music, but we felt like it didn't really fit the Consouling catalog.
As far as the aesthetics
and the genres are concerned. But we really wanted to be able to work with it. So we decided not to confine ourselves or constrict ourselves and just have this sub-label like 9000 Records by Consouling Sounds. So we created the opportunity for us to be able to work with those artists and with that music without it adding to the confusion of what Consouling music now is.
It's also a great way to connect to the really local cultural landscape.
Yeah,
to get embedded in this Ghent music scene, that was the intention. I think it did that job. It's not something that we really look for to expand as such, and it's not like we need to put out titles on this label every year, so many titles. No, not at all. It's more of a playground, I would say, on which there are now a few artists and bands that use it to release regularly, like Elephant. We have done several projects together, and Wolf, which is Elephant is his band, but now he will also release solo music. So and it's also very atypical music that might struggle to find a label because of its experimental nature. And yeah, so I think it's good for these artists that they have this platform to work with, and
the opportunity to work with them.
Yes, and Ghent is also recognized as a UNESCO City of Music. You have several of those around the world. So I think it's also a message that we want to give to the city council. You know, we are here to put our musical scene in an international community, perspective, context. That's very important to us, to get this recognition.
Yeah, because also basically we have to admit it. Those are also like people who in some ways will also support you by simply buying stuff at your store. I mean, like we have, that is like, we've been talking about funding. It's important for everybody and everything. The circuits,
Yes.
the label with the smallest number of releases, or the sub-label with the smallest number of releases.
The circuits came to pass because more and more electronic music found its way to us, and Consouling Sounds has been steering away from electronic music, and that was a very conscious decision because back when we started 13, 14 years ago, there were a lot of small labels starting up who were focusing on electronic music and electronic ambient music and stuff like that. And we said, okay, we're going to steer another course, and that's why there was no electronics on Consouling, but the music that reached it was really, really good. And again, we wanted not to constrict ourselves, but really give us the opportunity to also work with those types of music without it having to touch on the DNA of what Consouling Sounds was. So again, basically a playground for those types of music. And again, as with 9,000 records, we're not actively searching for acts to support the sub-label, but it's more like if there's something interesting passing by, then we have the opportunity to also present that way.
I also found it quite interesting. If I did my research correctly, if I did that, it seems as if there are artists or like band members of several bands, or at least one band that I know, that is on two different of your labels. Like one is on Circuits, and the other, and at the same time he's also releasing in a band on Soul Records, right? The guy who's in Fair, right? He's so that is interesting. So basically, you offer the artists two different homes for their different kinds of music. Yeah. Very, very interesting.
Yes, I wouldn't like, for instance, Bold Ruin. If we wouldn't have started with Circuits, I would feel comfortable releasing this simply under Consouling Sounds. It's just the way things go, I guess. Yeah. I mean, at a certain point, we decided to explore these more specific genres and just, you know, brand it in a different way. But well, it could have gone in a different direction, I think. Don't you think?
With Bold Ruin, I'd agree.
I'm talking gibberish now.
No, with Bold Ruin, I would totally agree. It would make sense also on Consouling, but with fair, I think
But
that
the
would
other
not work
no,
on
no,
consoling, right?
no, well. So it touches, it really touches each other, I think.
So now we've already been talking 1.5 hours, and I have a question. Shall we do the last 2 bits now, or at a different point?
Well,
Your decision.
I have to go and collect Eva from school in 20 minutes, so I don't know if we can.
We can definitely do one of those, but you decide. You two decide. The couple decide.
Short and snappy.
Okay.
Answer these questions in
so I will ask Mike a lot of questions. So
Go
the
ahead.
third bigger part, the consoling artwork. I love the way that you have established a kind of artwork corporate identity without ever trying to. You've already mentioned Lionel Arlen, who did some artworks for you. Are there other artists where you say, okay, those were artists that we worked with a lot and that really worked for our bands?
Yeah, we worked together with the Belgian artist Stefan and Neles for all the Nadja releases we have done. So those have their own identity thanks to this artwork. And then, of course, Keirsblick, he's also very important. He's magically gifted, and we are very grateful that he has collaborated with us for a few occasions, on a few occasions.
Lionel, of course.
Lionel is also very important.
Who will also be present at 24 Hours of Deep Listening with an exhibition, and he will do live screen printing, so that will be very cool. And it
Not
also
good for my wallet, though.
Designed a candle for us. We will go in the goodie bag of all the guests, so that's going to be a cool thing to have. But also, I mean, some artists we collaborated with maybe less regularly, but sometimes also the connection between a musician and an artist happened because they found each other at Consouling. Like Barst works together with Niels Verwijk, who comes from Holland, and they really met through Consouling. And now Barst is releasing a real movie that Niels shot. So yeah, you know, so it's really beautiful to see that people, even from different countries, come together and then they develop these Gesamtkunstwerk, you know, along the way. There we go again. We're going to make this word famous internationally.
Okay.
But nothing translates it. So, and let me think there have been other Belgian artists like Acoustics. I mean, I'm talking about smaller projects now, but you know, valued artists.
Some of the artists are visual artists.
Bram Bentijn.
Some of the artists are visual artists themselves, like IIVII from Alkerdeel.
Of course.
Who is responsible for the entire look. And,
so when we talk about art, would you agree that the artwork is underappreciated? Not with your label, but in general. When we think about people consuming music, a lot of them forget that the artwork.
I'm sure that's not always the case, but in some cases it's secondary, perhaps. Music is the most important, and then let's slap some art on there, and then we go. But of course, that's not always the case. Look at Baroness with John Baisley. He's very art to him is also very important. But yeah, we really value artwork and really have an eye for that as well. So that's it's also to the core of what we're doing. The visual identity is also very important, just like I stated earlier, because we're in it for the Gesamtkunstwerk.
Hashtag
would you agree? Yeah, we'll make that a trend. Would you agree that in order for a CD to be a Gesamtkunstwerk, it needs to have a different cover than a vinyl? Because I very often have the feeling that when you look at a CD and it's the same image as the vinyl, it just doesn't feel right.
Well, it can work, but it's always interesting when artists have an eye for that as well, and they take on the format. The CD is a much more format than LP, of course. So when you take that into account and make it visually interesting on both formats, that's always to be preferred.
Yeah, I forgot to mention a great artist, and now we're talking about these formats. I'm thinking about her, and that's Chris Morvan, or Neles Art, who is the partner in life of IIVII, and now also part of IIVII, because he started to develop the visual aspect into a total on-scene, amazing presentation. She's a live DJ. She makes all the elements that translate into the sleeve art, I mean, the cover art of the LP, the CD, the special editions, but also visuals on stage. And the last release we did with IIVII was, I mean, that's a pinnacle of this, I mean, a very good example of projects that make me happy. So there were 4 tracks. Every track has an animation video going with it, but all these animations were also translated into 4 images that came back into the special edition, because there was a screen print of each and every one of them. Mm-hmm. But also it was an augmented reality project, because you could at these prints through an app on your phone, and then they came to life. Like remembering the visuals on stage. Yeah. Also for the CD, this was then translated into a special packaging with 4 flaps opening up. And those kind of projects, those are really amazing, where it really still makes sense to make a physical product, or we hope that it might add to the appreciation of this physical objects. So yes, Chris is somebody who's also really great to work with, and she's a motion designer. That's her job, and she has found for herself a role in this musical project, but also it gave her wings to, you know, be her own artist in this discipline, and now is also asked to do this for other musical events. And so that's amazing when you see this happening. It's not because of Consouling that it is happening, but we are offering the possibility, and then it lifts it to another phase or stage, or those are amazing things.
Would you agree that some of your bands, for example, Alkerdeel or Amenra, that they have developed their own kind of aesthetic, which then again in some ways contributed to your own aesthetic?
Yeah, of course.
It's a continuous.
Both bands, they're aesthetically on a different path, but they have a very clear vision of what they want and how they want to present things. And for us being able to release those, it's also a statement of intent, of course, that every artist with a clear vision stands out in the crowd. So there are, of course, both those acts are very, very, very consciously aware of how to present their art, and that's also really a pleasure to work with.
It is the same with young bands on Consouling, who may be inspired by bands like Amenra. I don't know, you would have to ask them. Might also be inspired by other bands, but when I think of Potamus and when I think of Mother, they're also very conscious of. Also, yes.
There's of course the connection.
But like with Mother, they have so many ideas on the music as well as on the visuals that I sometimes have to warn dude, be careful, because you now have so many ideas for the next few releases, but I'm thinking you're gonna get even more. So leave some openness to be able to also explore future ideas. So
yeah, the guys seem as if they want to pack everything into one. That's true. But very, very, very nice guys. I like them. So last question, and then we're done. And that is something that I really liked about you as how should I say, about you as a couple and you as a label. Am I correct in thinking that your store is, well, it is a store, but it's also an open house? Because I was thinking about this artist in residence. You give your own space to other people?
Not yet physically, because we don't have an office or a studio, or we do have a network of people.
Yeah.
And the residence at the moment does not have this fixed physical spot. I don't know if it would ever need it. I don't think it's more about, you know, exploring what their needs are. But it is definitely an open house for the community surrounding it as well. I mean, you can drink a coffee in the store and you can just hang out, a coffee or something else. No alcohol. No alcohol. we decided on no alcohol because, you know, we're only open in the daytime and we don't want
attract crowds.
Yeah, but also, you know, vinyl
license and everything. I mean, like,
that's a different license also, and it shouldn't be about this. I mean, also the vinyl, this expensive stuff, you know, all the material. I mean, if you would spill beer on it, that would be really horrible. So
you break it, you take it.
You know, yeah, there you go. We're too soft for that.
Mama is too lenient. Oh,
yeah.
It's okay. You just broke a box of Amenra records, which is worth 500 euros, but it's okay.
No, I would be angry about that though. But no, so, but yeah, the idea is you can meet up and hang out, and there are people who definitely do that. Corona put a halt to it, definitely. Surely that was really sad. Now things are opening up again, and it's cool. We had people like Tim from Vienna, when he's watching this, hi, thinking about you, showed up one day, hi, I'm following you, and I just booked a trip to Ghent, holiday, just because I wanted to discover this place. And we've had many other people, you know, coming from the most unexpected places. Yeah, we do have people coming in from Holland and Germany and France on a regular label because it's not that far away. But it happens that people from Switzerland or Austria or even somebody from Brazil once turned up in our store. Amazing, amazing story.
Sacred halls.
Yeah, and it's really cool for us as well, you know. It's really heartwarming. You don't always realize this. And it's not about us, Thorsten. It never was. It's much more about the people meeting around it. We don't feel comfortable. I mean, it's important that we tell the origin story, and that's why we are here. But Consouling is not Mike and Nele, and Mike and Nele is not Consouling. It's a community, which we maybe started, but it doesn't not. It would be very unhealthy way of thinking that it would start and end with only us. You know, it's not something that we would want. It's we are part of it, and it's like a growing organism.
In some ways, it definitely is. I feel that way too. So thank you very much for doing this. It was one of the longest interviews I did, but it also definitely was one of the most interesting ones. So thank you very much. So as soon as we got this out, we will of course notify everybody, and I hope that we can bring a little bit more attention to this awesome label from Ghent, and that even now, as the organism is growing, that more parts come to it, meaning more people come to it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Thorsten. And see you soon, I hope.
See you soon.